And thanks for inviting us in. It's now 11 o'clock. For months, people in Franklin Township have asked this one question. Who's developing a massive data center? Our Alex Almanza got a hold of some documents revealing that answer. And Alex, neighbors say they're really not surprised.
Well, Scott, they say knowing that Google might be their new next door neighbor doesn't change their efforts to oppose the project. One person I spoke to today says the fight is still far from over. In a 9-page document obtained by 13 News, one word stands out: Google. A city official tells us the Q&A between city planners and the developer was sent to community members as part of a public records request. If the Google team is okay with it, I suggest sharing 2 elevations, wrote the respondent. For months, the tech giant chose to stay anonymous, using the code name Project Flow during the early process to complete what they called, quote, due process. It comes as some residents like Julie Goldsberry push back on the idea of having this in their backyard.
Many neighbors are, heck no, no way, no matter what. Some neighbors are concerned that the next thing might be worse.
According to planning documents, the estimated $1 billion project would apparently take anywhere from 5 to 10 years to complete, with up to 350 full-time jobs at full build-out.
Something else with that kind of square footage would bring hundreds of jobs. So in that regard, they're not doing their fair share either.
If built, this project would join Fort Wayne as the second Google data center project in the state. Fort Wayne's broke ground last year and is much larger, more than 700 acres, $2 billion, and an expected 200 jobs.
This is destroying communities. Why are we incentivizing it? If they're going to come and pay their fair share of taxes, fine, but they're not. We're giving them all kinds of abatements. What is in it for us?
Julie says even with more public hearings and discussions,
this feels like a done deal, that the powers that be want it to come, and so we're remonstrating, but also it feels like an empty gesture.
But even with the odds stacked against them, Julie says a fight is better than no fight.
But it does feel like we're David and Goliath is pretty big.
Now, 13 News has reached out to Google for comment, but have not heard back. We'll, of course, let you know when we do.
And Alex, I understand there's still some hurdles ahead, right?
Right. Well, on paper, it's not a done deal. The Metropolitan Development Commission will consider and vote on the rezoning petition at the July 16th meeting. That's at 1 o'clock at the County City Building. And that's the next public forum for debate between critics and petitioners.
All right, we know you'll continue to cover it. Alex Almanza, thanks so much.
Yep.
This Google proposal is one of several data centers planned across our state. Late last month, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation approved incentive packages for 4 of them, including the one in Franklin Township. New tonight at 11, attorneys for a man on death row are now asking the Indiana Supreme Court for 45 days to respond to the state's request for an execution date. So that filing came just last week. Roy Ward was sentenced to death back in 2007 for the rape and murder of 15-year-old Stacy Payne in 2001 in Spencer County. Now his attorneys are asking for that additional time because, among other things, they say the Indiana Department of Correction has not responded to 2 requests for information about execution drug costs and supply. Attorney General Todd Rokita already filed a response saying the justices should not grant that extension. In fact, it says Ward's attorneys can raise those issues in future litigation. A Lafayette father tonight is now sentenced to 32 years in prison after his 5-year-old son got a hold of a gun and killed the boy's 1-year-old brother.
We had here drug dealing parents who had loaded guns in the house that were obviously not stored properly.
All of this unfolded inside of an apartment back in March of 2023. Investigators say both of the boys had drugs in the system. Deonta Johnson was facing a neglect of dependent resulting in death charge and other counts.
I would just like to apologize to my family, friends, and the community. I asked that he showed a tad bit of leniency on my sentence. And apologize to my children for the tragic situation that has occurred.
Now, as part of his sentence, Johnson cannot have any contact with his surviving son. The mother of the boys, Shataya Welch, took a plea deal and got a 6-year prison sentence back in February. Tonight, I've got an update for you on a severe case of animal abuse here in Marion County. This involves a woman who'd been sentenced to 30 months in prison back in 2021 for crushing animals. Tonight, she and 2 others are now charged after officers discovered a dozen animals in a U-Haul living in grim conditions. Tonight, our Logan Gay tells us what else they discovered in that U-Haul.
Kyle Christie says he sees things a little differently since the day he and his neighbor met Crystal Scott, Crystal Bunch, and Tristan Cannon.
In some ways, maybe even a little more paranoid. Just whenever I see dogs with people, I'm a little less trusting and just think things that I never thought before, which honestly isn't great, but I guess I'm on the lookout.
Now, Scott, Bunch, and Cannon have been charged with cruelty to animals in Marion County, but the investigation started last month. Chrissy tells me he and his neighbors found a German Shepherd and had to hand him over to the group after they showed up and Scott claimed the dog was hers. Chrissy says that encounter raised red flags and led to a little detective work. He and his sister uncovered Scott's history of animal abuse in Howard County, sentenced for killing more than a dozen animals and posting the video on social media. He says they went looking for the 3 people, finding them in a U-Haul in a Hardee's parking lot. Then he flagged police. We just got court documents in this most recent case that lay out the disturbing allegations of what came next. The documents say authorities found 12 animals, dogs and cats, inside with no food or water. They say some of the kennels were so small the animals had no room to sit down without lying on their own urine and feces. According to those court documents, officers said the van smelled like dead animals. One of the officers reportedly found animal body parts in the van and dog collars with tags. Given Scott's history, Chrissy says he had his suspicions.
So that's not necessarily a shock, but to learn the details of it, it's not pleasant, and it just confirms your worst fears.
Indianapolis Animal Care Services took custody of all the animals, but no word on what happened to Bruno, that German Shepherd.
It's probably not the most realistic thing in the world to think that he's alive, but we haven't heard anything otherwise. So we're still holding out hope that we find Bruno.
Court documents say Cannon told officers they got many of the animals from social media. Christie says that's a big takeaway.
You need to do some vetting and make sure the people that are coming to pick up your dogs have good intentions.
And for good reason. In Indianapolis, Logan Gay, 13 News.
Tonight at 11, we want to look into a death investigation on the northwest side of Indianapolis. Tonight, police are confirming a man was found dead in the water around 1 this afternoon near 86th and Michigan. Right now, it's not clear how he got in the water or how long he'd been there. Right now, we're working to learn how he died. We'll be staying on top of this case and bring you updates as soon as we get them. Angela?
Scott, skies are clear, temperatures in the 70s. Another pretty comfortable night for central Indiana. 77 Indianapolis, 74 Muncie and Shelbyville, 73 Bloomington, and 75 degrees in Seymour. Morning temperatures not quite as low as they were this morning. We had a few places in the upper 50s. It'll be more like the upper 60s, low 70s early tomorrow morning. 72 at 8 a.m., 84 at noon with some sunshine. A stray storm possible. We're thinking 1 or 2 will pop up on radar tomorrow afternoon, and a similar setup for the 4th of July, but the heat is on and the humidity starts to build as well, forecasting close to 90 for tomorrow and the holiday.
All right, Angela, thanks so much. And now in D.C., House Speaker Mike Johnson is working to get his fellow Republicans to back a key procedural vote on President Trump's sweeping domestic policy bill. He is doing it as lawmakers are voting. At least 4 GOP members have voted against bringing this bill to the floor, including Indiana's Victoria Spartz. So that's enough to sink the procedural vote. We'll keep you posted on what's happening on Capitol Hill. Here's a look at the other stories making headlines right now. Mayor Joe Hogsett just announced the next director for Indianapolis Animal Care Services. Amanda Mahoney-Hinkle takes over on July 21st. She led Greenfield Hancock Animal Management the last 9 years, but she started her career at IACS. She's replacing the interim director, Kelly Diamond. Eagle Creek Beach is now back open. It closed nearly a week ago because of elevated levels of E. coli, but recent testing revealed those levels are now acceptable for swimming. Tonight, a 19-year-old man is under arrest, accused of shooting another man on the interstate here in Indianapolis. This happened Saturday night along I-70 near Shadeland Avenue. Police found a man who had been shot in the shoulder. Officers arrested the suspect yesterday on preliminary charges, including attempted murder. The Marion Police Department confirms tonight the death of K-9 AJ following an illness. AJ worked alongside the department's K-9 squad commander, Steve Scott. They both recently retired. This fire displaced 4 people on the north side of Indianapolis. It happened around 1 o'clock this afternoon at a home on Union Chapel Road near 86th and Keystone. Firefighters say the ceiling collapsed, forcing crews to evacuate. One person was home at the time and was checked out for a slight injury. Tonight, investigators are working to determine the cause. Remember, you can find all of our latest local stories anytime on our 13 News app.